Hey folks, welcome in. Thanks for being a little bit early. It's great to see you all. We've about 11 folks who are now live with us here on this webinar. As you're coming in, go ahead, drop your name, location in the chat. Tell us where you're calling in from and what brings you here to this podcast today, or I'm sorry, to this webinar today. What has you curious and interested about moms on mushrooms, about microdosing, about the potential and power of what microdosing can do for moms and mental health. We'd love to invite you to join the conversation. Just drop a note in the chat. Tell us where you're calling in from. And Alli, I'm going to mute you. Tell us where you're calling in from, and then we'll kick off officially at about 5 minutes past. So we're just going to give it a few more minutes. We have about 35 people who are now live with us. I would expect there to be somewhere between 60 and 80 people total who will be joining us. So go ahead and drop a note in the chat. Tell us why you're here, where you're calling in from. And what I'm going to do is as folks are coming in, is I made up a little poll that I'm going to publish. And the poll is simply asking whether or not you've tried a microdosing protocol before. So I just published that poll in the webinar. You can see it. Have you tried a microdosing protocol before? Yes, I have. No, I haven't. I've taken microdoses, but I've never necessarily done a protocol, meaning you've maybe done some low doses of psychedelics here and there, but never in an intentional protocol. And I'll just leave that poll there for folks as they're coming in to go ahead and respond to. So we have Callie calling in from Denver. Hi, Callie. It's good to see you here. Brittany, mom of one 8-year-old girl. Caitlin from Arizona. Caitlin worked in the mental health field for a while and is a new mom. Kathleen in the East Bay of San Francisco, a mother of an adult kid who has suffered with addiction and is looking for other ways to support her nervous system and psyche. Vanessa from Ontario has been learning a lot about the benefits of mushrooms. She's a mom of 2 little kids who deals with anxiety and depression, and she's interested in whether or not microdosing could be helpful for her. Anne is in Kansas City, 14 months out from a traumatic brain injury. I'm sorry to hear that, Anne. And mom to 2 small boys. Nikita, it's good to see you here. Nikita from New Jersey. Christy from Florida. Christy is passionate about paving the way for a better future for ourselves and our kids. Janice is here. Welcome, Janice. It's great to see you here from Vancouver Island. She gets a lot of mom clients asking if they can microdose while nursing, pregnant, if they have young kids. So folks, continuing to come in. We have almost 50 people who are now live with us. We'll officially kick off at about 5 minutes past the hour. As you're coming in, go ahead, drop a note in the chat. Tell us why you're here, why you're calling in, why you're joining us for today's webinar. And I've also dropped a little poll. And so that poll is just asking, hey, have you tried a microdosing protocol? Have you actually gone through with this so far? About 58% of you said, yes, you have tried a microdosing protocol. 27% of you said, no, you have not tried a microdosing protocol. And about 13% of you say, I've taken a microdose before, but never done a protocol. So that's really good. And that's some good intel for today, that almost 60% of you have already tried a microdosing protocol. So you're somewhat familiar with the process. You're somewhat familiar with some of the education and context around microdosing and around psychedelics. And so today will really be an opportunity to deepen in the practice, deepen in the process, and talk specifically about the context of mushrooms and motherhood and microdosing. So without further ado, I want to welcome to the stage Tracey Tee and Alli Schaper. I'll first introduce Alli because Alli will join us briefly and then come back online towards the end of today's call. Alli is the co-founder of Supermush, a functional mushroom brand, and the co-founder of the Microdosing Collective with myself and Josh Capel. Alli, it's great to have you here. What are you excited about today? Why are you joining us for the webinar?
I'm so happy to be with all of you. I can't wait it's just an excuse to hang out with Tracey, and I've been such a fan of her work and what you have done for this movement. So I'm so happy to have you here with us. And quick context for people that are joining that may not know about the Microdosing Collective and what it is. I'll give some more details on deeper dive what we're up to later, but this movement is really a movement of community and people that have had their life radically changed by the practice of taking sub-perceptual amounts of psychedelics, and really the rebranding of that movement, which Tracey has been such a huge part of from the world of moms. But so I can't wait to hear you talk. I'm really excited about the work that we're doing, the community we've collected, and the group of people that care about this and are just interested in exploring their minds in this way. The thing I'm excited about on this call, I just shared with Tracey before we kicked off, is that I coach people on microdosing and their practice, and really the goal, I think, of any great facilitator in this space is to fire themselves, because they're infusing so much self, wisdom into the person that they're working with, where so much of how we operate in our society is outsourcing our wisdom. We're looking for the answer, the right pill, for people to tell us what to do in all areas of our life, what to eat. And so the practice of microdosing can give you this incredibly beautiful gift, which is just in sourcing, what does my body want? And do I feel called to this medicine? Do I feel called to this food, to these people? It kind of echoes into all areas of life. So I'm really just so I'm just so grateful for the opportunity to work with microdosing. And that's what I'm the most excited for, to hear Tracey talk about that, and amongst other things. So I will leave it at that. I'll be back on later to share a little bit more about what we're up to as an organization, things that we have coming up, a research study that we're doing. So stay tuned for that later. And I hope you guys have an amazing hour with us and you leave more educated than when you came.
Thank you, Alli. We love Alli. Alli, the sort of intention of this collaboration with Tracey and the Microdosing Collective, and also Third Wave, which is a platform that I started many years ago, was to really amplify the specific benefits for moms, because moms take on a lot of the stress of everyday life, especially in these days and times. And unfortunately, because of the stigma that exists around psychedelics, a fantastic tool is not nearly as accessible and available as it should be. And so Tracey does live in Denver, which we will get deeper into in terms of how that supports or has supported her process, but many of us do not. And so really the core intention of the Microdosing Collective is, how do we make microdoses available to every mom and every human really who would benefit from the intentional use of them. So Tracey, it's great to have you once again. Alli, I'm going to cut your video, so we'll bring you back up later. All right, it's great to have you up here. Am I going to cut your video? Come on.
I can cut my own video.
Can you? Okay, thank you. Helpful. So we'll bring Tracey up to the stage. Tracey, it's great to have you with us. Tell us a little bit about why you're excited about this webinar. What has you showing up today and joining this process? You got to turn your audio on though, so we can hear you. You're muted.
That's better. I was just really gushing. I just said thank you, and I just want to share my mutual love for you and Alli and the Microdosing Collective, and just the beautiful work you're doing. Anyone who is on this call or listening in and hasn't joined at the very least, their email list, but certainly donating any small amount. The work that y'all are doing is profound and necessary for moms on mushrooms to keep continuing. So I'm grateful for you. So I've just been sitting here reading all of these chats, and thank you all for joining us and sharing. The reason Moms on Mushrooms exists is for this chat thread. Moms are overwhelmed. We are looking for new solutions for better mental health and healing. And Moms on Mushrooms is an online educational platform and community aimed at bringing mothers together to learn about and create an intentional practice with psychedelics. Right now in this season of our organization, we're really focusing on microdosing psilocybin, and we can get into that a little bit later. But there hasn't really ever been a space where mothers who have the shared experience of motherhood can feel like they can safely discuss psychedelic use in a safe and empowered way with education at the core. And so that's why Mom was here. And thank you, Medicine, for guiding me to this place. We're entering into our third year, so we're still very much getting our sea legs. But my goal is to empower moms with knowledge about psychedelics so that the stigmatization, the misinformation that's been pervasive especially in our country for the last 50 plus years, starts to go away and mothers can make informed decisions.
Tell us a little bit about the mom mental health crisis. What is really going on specifically in America? or North America around moms and mental health. Why are the sort of rates of mental health issues getting stronger or worse? What's going on with, when it comes to suicide, when it comes to SSRIs? Kind of paint us the picture right now, Tracey, as it exists currently.
Yeah, the picture is it took a long time to paint, actually. When I really started tapping into this, I had to go back a long ways. For me, and this is just kind of like my vision of how moms got to this place, is that we've really been allowed to be numbed out as mothers in times of distress. We've had permission to do that and actually are almost encouraged to do it, because I really believe as a society, we don't like to see mothers feeling a lot of big feelings, right? Like, we're very concerned and very uncomfortable with a mom who's crying, or a mom who's unhappy, or a mom who has a lot of anger, or a mom who just feels freaking great and is just fully like living her life. We don't really like that as a society. And this starts back when we used to chloroform mothers when they were giving birth. We didn't even like to hear them scream when they were giving birth to a baby. And the chloroforming went on to the benzos and the opiate and the Valium, just take a pill in the middle of the day if you're overwhelmed, like it's okay. And then it went into the martini during bridge club, and everything just has this sort of pithy sort of like, well, we know she's unhappy. That's the whole mommy's little helper mentality. Oh, look at this sad housewife just sitting there in her apron, putting something in the oven. Let's just give her a pill. And then it went into the wine mom and into, oh, well, it's okay to just crack open a bunch of Chardonnay during a play date. And now we have this also, inside of that, we also have this overprescription of SSRIs. And as most people in the psychedelic space will say, nothing wrong with an SSRI. If you are down here and baseline is up here, you've got to get to baseline. And that's what SSRIs are really beautiful for. What was happened is that we've had doctors prescribe this without a deeper understanding of root cause of why someone is unhappy, overwhelmed, anxious. And we are prescribing medicine with no exit strategy. And so it's a life sentence. And what we have found is that many, many women are starting to wonder, what is this medicine even doing for me anymore? And what would it feel like if I came off of it? And the fear around not knowing how you're going to feel when you come off of a medication, or even wondering if you need it anymore, is real. And we have this intersection of no information about that and no real exit strategy. And then we have this burgeoning psychedelic space that's coming up, that's saying, and this is what Moms on Mushrooms is saying, look, there's another solution here, but in between, there's a lot of question marks. And so there is this just, it's hard being a mom mindset, and it's not a mindset, it's just real. And cultural non-acknowledgement of the support that moms need, which leads me into kind of the second bucket, which is just a lack of spiritual connection, a lack of ceremony, a lack of community. We talk about, oh, you need your tribe, or, people sitting around the circle. But the truth is that we're more disconnected than ever. Many families don't live with their, live in the same area as grandparents. There's not a lot of help. And what we know is that mothers need community. We need support. You not only need help raising children, because it does take a village. It's hard to raise a child or multiple children. Someone on here has 5 kids, a dad, I think, or 6. He can speak to that. And then the second part is that as adults and as parents, you need support and community from others who are sharing your experience. Mm. And with all of that gone, we're left with people who feel empty, disconnected, addicted, overwhelmed, just lonely, sad, depressed. I mean, it goes on. And the beautiful thing about psychedelics is it can help bring us back to that stasis in a lot of different ways.
Yes, this need. I mean, what I'm hearing you talk about, one thing that comes up is I grew up in a family that church was a center point of, and yet that was only once a week on a Sunday, and there was some community around it, but you'd go to church and you'd go home, right? There was no communal living necessarily. It was just a single day where you'd have your friends and you'd have your community. And I feel like that's many people are no longer going to church, including myself. And we're asking these questions about where is that community center for us? Where is that community home? And how do we find the people that we know we can lean on? And I think one thing that's really interesting about what's happening in the psychedelic space right now is more people are exploring this church model and this community centered model. Mm-hmm. And I think you're really at the center of it, being in Denver, specifically in Colorado, where it was recently legalized. And so I'd love to sort of start to transition into that. When is it that you really started to explore microdosing, and what are maybe some of the most common questions that moms have in regards to microdosing and the impact that it could have, or the risks around it, or the concerns and questions that might come up? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I mean, the concerns are many that I had, and I also grew up in a conservative Christian home during the DARE era. Nancy Reagan in my ear telling me that my brain is going to melt out my ear like an egg was very real. And it wasn't really until COVID, after having been on a large spiritual journey for a long time before that, when I lost my former business, and the fear, the existential crisis, and then the palpable grief of losing a company, due to lockdowns was real. And on my spiritual journey, psychedelics, they just inevitably come up. And I was always like, well, I can never do that. Like, I'm a mom, like there's no way. And I just had the space and time to kind of dive in. And what I found with microdosing in particular, and I just want to address, because I know some people in the chat have some health issues too. Just a little bit of context. I've had stage 4 endometriosis my entire life since I think I was diagnosed when I was 22. And I ended up having to have a full hysterectomy at 41. So like everything taken. So I walked in with hormones and I walked out 24 hours later from that surgery with hot flashes. That's how fast menopause hit. And I was very young. I'm still very young. And so I was also looking for something, because my functional medicine doctor wisely put me on Wellbutrin to manage that swing into this incredible shift. And I didn't have an exit strategy. And so I was looking at that from that lens too. So when I started microdosing, so many of the dots started to connect with the things that I had been looking for as a mother. And at that point, my daughter was a little bit older. She was about 9 years old. But the emotional reactivity, the sense of overwhelm, the lack of focus, and not in wanting to be present with my kiddo, but just not really feeling like I could access that. Microdosing really helps that. And the concerns about legality, am I going to go to jail? Am I going to become addicted? Those are all very real, and we can get into them individually. But thankfully in Denver, it was decriminalized at the time. But so I didn't have to worry about that in particular, but it's a very real thing. And the truth is that moms don't have a lot of time to be high, and we don't have a lot of time to experiment with dosage and things that might compromise our very busy days. And I think when microdosing is applied correctly and in a container, in a community where you can just take your time and you've got guidance and people to support you, it's a perfect gateway to understand how psychedelics can help mental health. And there isn't a lot of risk, despite what we've been told. The beautiful thing about microdosing in particular is that you are not high, right? And so the anecdote of start low and go slow is very true. And as someone who's a recovering type A, triple Aries, I was like, psychedelics, this is it. I'm diving in. And we don't really have to. You've made it this long without shrooms, right? Like, you can take some time and educate yourself, really understand how it works in the brain, understand your brain for maybe the first time ever, and then slowly apply and start to dip your toes into microdosing. And as you listen to your body, and then, create an intentional protocol. So I know that was kind of like a wide answer, but hopefully I tapped on some of your questions.
Well, and you've done a lot of media around this topic in particular. And I'm curious, as you've gone on, Dr. Phil and the Today Show and Good Morning America, what are some of the most ridiculous questions or absurd questions that you get asked from these journalists about moms who are microdosing?
Yeah, I think, my favorite one is, oh, it's just mommy's little helper. Oh, you're just numbing out. You're just high. And the funny thing is, and this is, again, our cultural obsession with alcohol. And that's the other thing. I brought this up on the Dr. Phil show, and he told me it was a non-answer when I always try to relate alcohol to psychedelics, because it's the only things we really understand. You can buy alcohol on every street corner, anywhere in America, close to schools, not close to schools. No one asks you if you have an addiction problem. Nobody asks you what medications you're on. And it is the most toxic thing you can put in your body. Do I think it should be outlawed? Absolutely not. Do I still drink wine? 100%. So everyone should have sovereignty to choose what they put in their bodies, but it is so much more destructive than psychedelics. It's laughable when you look at the science. And so the beautiful thing about psychedelics is that you become more present, you become more aware, you become more accountable to your toxic traits and your bad behaviors. That is the opposite of what alcohol does. So the idea that moms are numbing out is hilarious when you're microdosing, because you're more dialed in than you ever have been. And that's certainly what I felt. I was more accountable to everything. I was feeling everything, and do still, which is the complete opposite of what alcohol does. And so then from there, it goes into like, well, you're just modeling bad behavior to your kids. I'm not. Every mom on this call, and I guarantee you guys can like put a hands up in the chat. If you are really passionate about something as a parent, it's the last thing your kids want to do. So even though I am so proud that I'm raising my child with a very embodied, very intentional understanding around psychedelics, we don't filter anything. She knows exactly what it is. She's seen it all. We talk about my journeys. It's very clear. The last thing my teenage daughter wants to do is mushrooms, because mom's been talking about it her entire life. So if you want an anti-drug policy, get parents on board with microdosing, and your kids are going to be like, that's lame. My mom does it, and they'll never do it. Now, of course, my prayer is that she absolutely will. And I think she will. But I just think all the media, this eye rolling that moms don't know what we're doing, or that we can't do it on our own, it's got to stop. I mean, this is where we're at, I think, as a society, we're just kind of tired of being told that we can't be sovereign women.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. And this is in some ways the story of women, not only this century and last century, but for many, many centuries. And so I think there's a really powerful relationship between the reawakening of, psychedelic education and literacy, and the reawakening of the feminine. And microdosing is a really beautiful sort of bridge or entry point for a lot of women to come back into that. So
yeah. And I think too, when you brought up church, one thing we find in Moms on Mushrooms is a lot of moms actually end up going back to church. I've been thinking about this a lot, about how psychedelics, especially mushrooms, they're very agnostic, but I feel they're very spirit-centered if used correctly. And the beautiful thing about heart medicine, and psilocybin in particular is heart medicine, is that you start to chip away at these like crusty covers of the heart, chip away at, the craggy judgment and the fear, or the better than, the righteousness. And what you come to understand is that we're all just doing the best we can. And you start to really tap into compassion. And then you are open to understanding what it feels like to have a direct connection to spirit, or to God, or to Jesus, whatever you want to call it. And from that space, you can actually, I think, enjoy church more, because what you don't need is like a dude on a pulpit telling you how to think. You're just there to actually be with spirit. And we find that to be very common with people. So again, the ho-hum, the angry people that are saying, oh, this is a heathenistic thing. Actually, a lot of moms on mushrooms stop drinking, get off their medications, have more time with their family, go back to church. Tell me what's wrong with that.
Yeah. I mean, who wouldn't want to take a little bit of mushrooms and go to a beautiful sanctuary and sing some choral hymns? Right? Yeah. Give me some Bach and mushrooms.
Oh my gosh.
Every Sunday of the week, that would be
Bach and mushrooms.
Yeah, that would be a dream.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have in my notes, right? Just so we're clear, and we've touched on it, and I think many of the folks who are here with us, they're aware of it, but just to define microdosing, how would you define microdosing specifically with psilocybin mushrooms? What are maybe some of the most common protocols that you notice moms start with, the amounts, kind of how they start to work it into their daily and weekly rituals and routines?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so microdosing is taking a sub-perceptual or sub-hallucinogenic dose of magic mushrooms. And I suppose the anecdotal understanding of it is the profound healing effects that we know can happen in a large dose situation. If you break that down into tiny doses where you are not feeling any of the hallucinogenic effects, you are completely in control, and you break it down into those doses and you take it intentionally over time, you can achieve the same healing effects as a large dose experience. And I think the benefits also for microdosing are the active rewiring of your neural pathways in real time. Like you're doing it day to day, and then you're pulling that in on your days off. And so what you're doing is not only teaching and reframing your brain to work and create new pathways, to drop toxic thoughts, patterns, activities, you're doing it oftentimes without any medicine at all. And so we're unlearning what the Western allopathic medical model taught us, which is that we have to take a pill every day, the same day, out of this brown bottle forever, amen, or we're not going to be okay. And psychedelics are actually, and microdosing is actually the complete opposite. So in terms of protocol, I have a very controversial opinion about it. I don't think we need another dude in a coat telling us how and when to take a microdose. I really believe that mothers, if you take the time to create an intentional relationship to it, I really believe in intuitive microdosing, because intuition plus a tool in your toolkit, which is a microdose, and then honesty with yourself will always inform your why. And I think you should microdose on the days when you know your why, and you know why you want to do this, what you want out of it. You're willing to commit to some awareness around microdosing. Those are going to be potent microdose days. And the days you don't know your why or you don't need it, then you don't do it. So we really promote that understanding. And a lot of that comes with body awareness, tapping back into your intuition. For mothers, giving yourself permission to turn your intuition back on. And then from there, you can create your own microdosing protocol.
Now, it's interesting. I'm glad you're bringing this topic up. So what Tracey is referring to a little bit is there have been two main protocols that have been talked about. One is a 1 day on, 2 day off protocol. So essentially twice a week for 5 weeks. And then another one is a 4 day on, 3 day off protocol. Now, I will say there hasn't been a lot of clinical research, but some of the early clinical research in regards to microdosing shows that there's some efficacy in the consistency of it, at least in the first month. That having a structure and doing it, there is a physiological impact on, for example, BDNF, brain-derived neurotropic factor, which is a precursor to neuroplasticity. So I agree with you that the capacity to check in with ourselves before we take it, to have an intention, to be aware is important. And I think there's also something going on it can't be explicitly physiological, but there's definitely a strong physiological impact that is, that there's sort of like an accretive benefit when we do it consistently, at least for the first month or so. So often what I advise is it could be 2 times a week, it could be 3 times a week. Sometimes it could be 4 times a week, depending on who that person is. At times, having a coach or practitioner in your corner who is very experienced with microdosing or low doses of psychedelics. It could be a clinician, like a therapist or psychologist or psychiatrist. It could also be a coach who is really experienced. Having someone in your corner who can help you to refine that can be really useful. And then sort of the metaphor that I love to describe is these protocols are like scaffolding. So that scaffolding helps you to feel safety in sort of an experimental phase as a lot of folks transition into this. But at the end of the day, the goal is to remove the scaffolding and have this new sense of self that is created, which allows for a more intuitive approach over the long term. Like at this point, I don't really, unless I'm doing my own experiments so I can test it also with clients, a lot of my own microdosing is just more on an intuitive level, which I think can be helpful.
And I'd even push that further. I mean, at Mom, we really even recommend giving yourself 3 solid months, because I do think we're busy. We have a lot thrown at us. I think 3 months is a really good time for you to say, I'm going to be microdosing and go through the ups and downs, the integration, feel different things in your body. I do think it takes some time. It's not something that you're going to take a pill and 3 days later, everything is going to be fixed. And what we've also found is this urgency of wanting it to work so badly, and then this resistance to feeling uncomfortable. And for mothers in particular, it goes back to kind of the emotions and not wanting women to be hysterical. A lot of moms find that you're crying a lot more, or you're really freaking angry a lot more. And what we'll hear is, well, I did this for 2 weeks and I've been crying all the time, so it's not working. I need to go back on my SSRIs. And internally as a team, we're like, no, but it probably is, because that non-specific amplifier is actually bringing the things up and out of your body that need to be acknowledged. And it takes some time to go through some of those initial onion layers to feel really comfortable with the medicine. So I love your metaphor of scaffolding. I think that's great. And I think community really, this medicine doesn't want to be taken in a vacuum. I really believe that. So whether it's a coach or a group or a good practitioner who understands it from a deeper psychophysiological level and not just science, frankly, is going to help you, because you need to talk it out. You know, it needs to be explored.
I'm just reading some of the comments. So folks, as Tracey and I are continuing to unpack our own onion here, if you do have questions, drop them in. We're going to have time the last 15 minutes or so. So about at 12:35, we're going to transition into questions. So about 5 more minutes, and then we'll get into questions. And one thing I wanted to go into a bit more detail on, Tracey, is these archetypes of mothers who are coming into microdosing at different points in their life. So you shared your own example of, having endometriosis and having a hysterectomy and Wellbutrin, and how microdosing helped with some of that process. There are a lot of moms I know that have benefited from, they have postpartum depression after giving birth, and they benefited from microdosing within that process. Tell us a little bit about what are some of these common archetypes of moms who are coming into microdosing, and how is microdosing helping them? For me, a lot of it seems to come down to energy and mood. It helps them to have more energy and have a better mood. But give us a little bit more nuance of the sort of archetypes of moms who are coming into this, and some maybe examples or things.
Yeah. I mean, the fun thing is, and the amazing thing is, that we have moms that come in weeks postpartum, and we have moms that come to us at 70, 75, 80, 85 years old. And, again, the shared experience of motherhood is what kind of binds us together and gives us a common language to explore what it means to be a happy, healthy mom, because happy, healthy moms raise happy, healthy kids. And so inside the idea of being a happy, healthy mom are multiple things. We have a lot of moms who come in who are just like, I am relying way too much on my 1 to 2 to 3 glasses of wine every night. I want out. We have a lot of moms that come in that are like, I don't know how to not yell at my kids. I don't actually know how to not do that anymore. I want help. And they know, to your point, a lot of it is energy and mood, but they can't get past the swirling tornado that's around them to sink into a space where you don't have to be swirling anymore. A lot of that comes with this learned story that we don't have permission to be happy. We don't have permission to feel joy, and we don't have permission to feel anger and rage and sadness. All of those things are typically anesthetized in a bunch of different ways. We're either shoved to the side and told we're crazy. We're either said, it's PMS, she's hysterical, she's nuts. Let's give her a pill, she's crying too much, there's something wrong with her, she's depressed. But no one just says, maybe this is just a woman with big feelings at this time. And so the archetype really falls back into that. And then we have moms that are just, just deeply want to feel creativity again. And one of the biggest things I love hearing from mothers is, after kind of going through one of our courses and starting microdosing, is I've started painting again. I started writing again. I picked up my guitar. I'm playing music again. I'm singing in church choir again. Not because I need to do it as a career or start an Etsy store, but just because I freaking love it. And again, when you go into those joyful things, it trickles down into how you raise your kids. And what we often forget as mothers is that we are women who happen to be moms. We are both, but we are women first. We are our own sovereign human being who has her own desires, her own creative pursuits, her own thoughts. She is herself. And then she happens to be a mom on top of it. And when we forget this part really suffers. And so bringing you back to that and saying, you know what, you actually have permission to take a bath. You have permission to go on a walk. You have permission to go to yoga class. You have permission to microdose. Then the whole world opens up, because you realize that the human part of you has access to a lot of things that make you happier and healthier.
Yeah, the emotional variance, I think, is an important thing, right? We talked about with SSRIs, a lot of stuff can be kept below the surface. When we start to microdose or do inner work, all of a sudden, a lot of these emotions come online. And a part of the process is even shifting our identity in such a way where we can come to love and accept these parts of ourselves that are coming online that may be more messy and vulnerable. The joy and the bliss and the happiness and the love is great, but also the sadness and the shame and the grief, it's part of the process as well.
Yeah. And one real profound thing for me that I found, that's kind of both practical and spiritual, is that I completely changed how I mother. Because when you start to understand your own feelings, your own needs and desires, you stop listening to what the world is telling you to do. And what really helped me as a mom is I started seeing the world through my daughter's eyes instead of through the eyes of an adult who has been programmed, who was raised by parents who told her what to do, who had all these external influences. I started asking, what does Evie want? Like, what's the best for Evie? And that actually changed everything for how we parent her. My kid actually doesn't like doing a ton of after school activities. It's not good for her. She needs her quiet time. I stopped listening to what my friends are doing. I stopped comparing myself to my friends. And we changed schools. We dropped a bunch of activities. I gave my daughter space to fill her own cup and recharge her own battery. And that looks a lot different than a lot of my friends and how they raise their kids. And I stopped judging them. I let them do their own thing, and knowing that I'm doing my own thing. And it just makes for just a lot less friction in your day-to-day life. And that is absolutely something that microdosing helped me do.
Beautiful. Well, Tracey, I'd love to transition into questions now, Q&A, because we have quite a few questions, many of which you probably heard before. So you could take as much time or as little time on each of these. The first one is microdosing and breastfeeding.
Yeah.
Or microdosing and pregnancy. How do you typically navigate that?
Yes, I'm actually really excited for this question. I have been knee deep. We have created a resource guide that has compiled every scientific paper, research study, conversation that we could find about breastfeeding, and we've put it in one place. So I guess if you guys are here, I'll get that out to you at some point. It's a tricky one because there's not a ton of actual research data. FDA hasn't approved it. We don't want to harm the life of the child or the mother. So there's anecdotal and there's theoretical. My answer for me personally is that there is a general pervasive theory that psilocybin in particular does not attach to breast milk lipids in the fat lipids in the way that cannabis or alcohol does, combined with the idea that with the known knowledge that psilocybin exits the body within 18 to 24 hours completely. you can, and then if you add microdosing, you're taking such a small, tiny amount that will exit quickly. You can decide if that feels right for you. But there are plenty of other substances that do remain in the bloodstream, including caffeine for days potentially, that are very different than psilocybin. We also do prescribe SSRIs in pregnancy and during breastfeeding. Again, we're working on the serotonin receptors, and the doctors and researchers that I've spoken to directly suggest that if that is being prescribed, then you could posit that psilocybin would have the general same effect. And then so again, you decide from there. My other question mark or to offer is that we go back to our wisdom traditions and cultural traditions that have been working with this medicine for generations. And we know that there are mothers who, take ayahuasca during childbirth. We know that curanderos and shipibos are often, tapped at very young ages and have been working with psychedelic medicine as early as 6 years old. And they're serving and living long, fruitful lives. So I think looking at our wisdom traditions and asking what are they doing and looking at the outcomes is a very helpful way to reframe the fear around it. But ultimately, I think it's a mom's decision. But we do have a resource guide, at least that compiles all the science as much as we can find.
What about, can you still hear me?
Yeah.
I'm coming through? Okay, fantastic. Can you speak to this relationship if someone is on an SSRI or if they're on Wellbutrin, a mood stabilizer, or an SNRI, and they want to start to microdose with psilocybin, how to navigate that process?
Sure. So, we know that an SSRI or SSNRI typically blunts the effect of psilocybin. Again, a very basic illustration is that like SSRIs are closers and a psychedelic psilocybin is an opener. Okay, so you can see how they would be in conflict. So typically they don't contraindicate unless it's lithium, which is not an SSRI. Most SSRIs don't contraindicate with psilocybin, which means that you can do both. You may have to take a higher dose than others, and you may not feel the effects, but it's possible to work with both. And if the goal is titration off of the SSRI, microdosing can actually be very supportive in this. And Paul, I know you have a million things to say about this. It can be very supportive in the negative effects of coming off of an SSRI. And I think in that space, I also am just doing more research and experimentation. I really think stacking with functional mushrooms during that time is actually really beneficial as well. So it's possible. And we have women coming all the time. And then there's really great pharmacologists, psychedelic pharmacologists out there that are really dedicating their studies and their livelihoods to the intersection of psychedelics and pharmacology. And I would advise anyone to book a consultation with someone and come up with a really clearly defined titration schedule.
Yeah, my advice would be talk to a psychiatric professional if this is something that you want to move forward with. In speaking with friends of mine who are psychiatrists, I think another great option to look at if you are someone who is on a mood stabilizer or an SSRI is ketamine, as well as a legal option. Ketamine interacts with the brain much differently than psilocybin in particular. Ketamine is legal and available. And so I will point people in those directions. And the jury's a little mixed on this, but I would also advise not doing very high doses of psilocybin if on an SSRI or on an SNRI, just because it's rare, but there is some concern about issues with serotonin syndrome, which we don't have enough time to go fully into. But the crux of it is, if you're going to do this, do so under the guidance of a medical professional. Don't just, maverick it and just hope for the best, because that might not end in a very good way. Okay. I
also just want to say, we also don't ever encourage anyone just to quit cold turkey. I know sometimes it's like, oh, microdosing really resonates with me. Oh my gosh, I want to do it. This feels right. I hate the Zoloft. I want to quit. And then they just quit. And that can be incredibly destabilizing. The body does create a dependence on those substances, and it can really mess you up. So I think titration is always advised.
I would agree with that. Any advice on how to introduce microdosing to family, especially family that may be more conservative?
Woo! Yeah. Well, unpopular answer, may not go well. It did not for me. But my heartfelt answer is that you just have to walk the walk, right? And I think showing responsible, intentional use, and again, being able to vocalize your why to someone who's very intrinsically judgmental or scared, or just diametrically opposed to psychedelics, and just sharing why this is your choice and what you hope your outcome is, and not that you're just doing it as a fad or that it's a flippant decision, but that it's that you are empowered with knowledge. You do understand what you're taking. Typically people can't really argue with facts. And then if you get pushback, then your life becomes your message, as Gandhi said, and just live the best life that you can and showcase in the best way the changes that this beautiful medicine is creating in your life. And that doesn't actually require a conversation. And if someone isn't willing to see that and applaud you, one of those onion layers sometimes might be that those aren't the people that might ultimately remain in your life in a really close way like they were before. So it's tricky. I also think it's changing rapidly as this becomes more mainstream. There's so much information. There's so many good podcasts and conversations to point people to, not the least of which is, His Honor, Andrew Huberman. And so there's things that you can talk about that are easy. And besides that, you just got to walk the walk.
Thank you. What can you expect from your first experience with microdosing?
Sometimes not that much, you might just have a day where you just have a little bit more pep in your step. It really depends on where you're at in life. There's so many factors. Microdosing isn't a one size fits all. It affects every human different. And there's so many things that go into that, not the least of which is what you ate that morning, how much sleep you had, how much stress you're under. I mean, so many factors play in to how psilocybin hits in the body. So for me, within the first week, I was really starting to feel like my life just kind of going like this. Like I love mushrooms. I was for sure put on this earth to work with mushrooms. It is my master teacher. And so, but I was also in a deeply introspective space where I was doing a lot of spiritual work. So it just amplified that and I was ready for it. But I think within the first 2 weeks, you'll probably notice some positive results, which, it may just be like, oh, I just didn't yell at my kid or my partner when I normally would have. Like, oh my gosh, that just didn't bum me out like it used to. Wow, that was a really funny joke and I really laughed and it feels really good to laugh. Or, oh, I took a bath. There's small micro things that you may not notice until you reflect back.
I love baths. I'm so glad you mentioned
baths are the best.
Yeah, they're the absolute best. For one final question. Okay, this is a question from Mickey, and she asked it twice, so it sounds like it's very important. Do you believe mushrooms are intelligent? And can we ask for targeted healing when we set our intentions or specific help when we're working with mushrooms?
What a beautiful question. Yes, I absolutely think mushrooms are intelligent. I believe mushrooms are, for me, it feels like a multiple entity energy. It feels plural. In South American cultures, they call them Los Niños de Luz, children of the light. And it really feels that way. Can you ask them for specific things? Yes. Will you always get it? No. Do you in prayer ask for specific things? Does God give you exactly what you ask for? No. I think what we're understanding is that intention and, again, personal accountability and the openness to your own shadow and your own desires is paramount to you achieving whatever you want. Maria Sabina said it best, you are the medicine. These are tools that can help, and they are intelligent. They will help you see what you may not be able to see on your own. And from there, it's up to you to decide if the changes you want to make are going to happen. I don't know. That might have been too obtuse, but I think that's how I feel.
Well said. Well said. Well said. Final question. Can you speak to sourcing, the elephant in the room? Okay. Microdosing. It sounds great. How do I get the mushrooms? Where do I go for this?
Yeah, I can't speak to that.
I can speak to it.
Go ahead.
I'm happy to handle that tiger by the tail. So with Third Wave, I can say on Third Wave, we have a mushroom grow kit, which is fully legal. You can essentially order a grow kit. You have to order the spores separately and grow them yourself. I also know, we've amplified a few different platforms, and I'm really speaking with my Third Wave hat on now, not my Microdosing Collective hat, because pretty much anyone who is openly selling this is doing so illegal. It's why we've started Microdosing Collective in the first place. But there are a couple in particular that are trustworthy. There's one called Golden Rule, which is based out of Colorado. And then there's another one that is called psilocybin that does things on a donation basis. And they have a lot of sort of rationales and reasons as to how it's legal. A lot of it has to do with it being on a donation basis, being part of a church. It's a somewhat gray area, but there are now quite a few platforms that are openly selling microdoses. The challenge is there's no consumer protection. So again, I know these two because they're run by friends of mine. I know the quality is very good. But it's a bit of a wild west out there. And so a lot of folks are just going into, a random smoke shop or head shop, and they're buying a mushroom chocolate that they see in there, and you actually don't really know whether it's real mushrooms that are in there. So my advice would be for anyone who's potentially purchasing psilocybin to do so through a trusted source, to maybe even grow your own to start. Like I said, there are very easy ways to do that. On Third Wave, even we have like a sourcing guide, like a downloadable PDF that will help point people in the right directions for that, because that often is
it is. And, we do have a really great, easy program called Microdosing 101 for moms. And you get a really great live seminar from me that's live once a month. You get a really great self-paced course, and then you get connected to a licensed nutritionist who will discuss mushrooms with you. And someone who we trust very much. So I just dropped the link in the chat for that too. But
Great.
Agree on your other sources and grow your own. I mean, shrooms are the best. They grow everywhere. They grow everywhere in the country. So the most democratic thing you can do is grow it yourself. And I will say Moms on Mushrooms are a private membership. It's $2.22 a month to join. It's called The Grow. And we have a flourishing home grow club in there. It's probably our most popular subgroup of hundreds and hundreds of moms growing shrooms in their laundry rooms and spare bathrooms and doing a great job.
It's fantastic. Well, let's bring Alli back up to the stage. Alli, if you could come join us, we'd love to have you here. Welcome back. Welcome back, Alli. It's good to see you. Welcome back.
Tracey, it made me so emotional to hear you talk. It was so beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
What are some of your reflections, Alli, and where can people go from here in terms of what we're up to with Microdosing Collective and all these sorts of things?
Yeah, well, I think I'll comment on what Tracey shared, and then I'll use that as a segue to get into what we're doing and how you can support and things that we have coming up. But I think so often people are talking about the very logistical, intellectual part of this. And what you just spoke to so beautifully is the heart medicine and the leaning into your own intuition that this gives every human the ability to have access to. And I've actually refined my own language as my whole world is surrounded with mushrooms, functional mushrooms, psychedelic mushrooms. I talk about mycelium a lot and the wisdom from fungi. And I often would say mushrooms changed my life. And the refinement that I started using was that they gave me the opportunity to change my life and gave me the awareness to do so. And so I think you're speaking into a really potent area where the ability to kind of stand in your own truth in a world that's trying to tell you different or trying to tell you your intention is different. Every single thing can be poison or medicinal in the right dose, and maybe even the same person using the same thing, but with the different intention, it completely changes the impact. Mushrooms don't lie because they have spirit within them. And so when you're communing with these substances, the intention that you put into them is everything. And oftentimes the things that come up are the things that we don't want to look at. But if we do look at, they'll just radically change our life in so many ways. So I was very deeply affected by what you shared. I don't want to, lose track of that in my own path. Because a lot, we're so focused on advocating for the legalization of this and kind of trying to prove the science, but the community and the impact that is being made on all these lives really does speak for itself. So your story is really impactful. So thank you. And a few things that are going on over here, as we shared at the beginning, Microdosing Collective is the first 501c3, I think in the world, but definitely in the United States, focused on the legalization of microdosing. So we're kind of this house, this community central hub for all things microdosing. We have a wide variety of people that are a part of our community. And the major goal of this initiative is not only community education, but eventually to actually support the legalization of these things, because all the beautiful things that Tracey just talked about are all currently illegal on like a mass market scale. And we want to make sure that people have legal, safe, educated access to this really impactful medicine and the supported resource and practice around it, which is the most important thing. So that being said, a few things that are going on is we are in the process of focused specifically on California with legalization. We have a policy team. We hired the first ever microdosing lobbyist to be a part of our organization and help us find kind of like a bill stakeholder, like a key person that can sponsor our bill in California and our proposition to help make sure this is included in future psychedelic policy. So we're making really great headway there. We have 2 events scheduled later this year to advocate and kind of introduce and educate this concept to people that are actually working in the Capitol, lobbyists, senators, et cetera. So that's what's happening on the policy side. And Josh Capel is our co-founder, lawyer that helped legalize psychedelics in Colorado and passed the most progressive decrim bill, very successful psychedelic lawyers. That's kind of our triad of people here that are spearheading this organization. And on the community side, we have a few fun things coming up. We are doing a big party at MAPS on June 19th. So if you're going to be at Psychedelic Science, which is the large psychedelic conference that MAPS hosts, we are going to be there with our entire team, our entire community in Denver. It's going to be super fun. Our approach to building community is to host really incredible parties and do those around psychedelic conferences and really bring together people in the spirit of what it means to be a microdosing community and what so much of the chat has reflected, what Nicole reflected as well, as this community is so beautiful. So a lot of people just have come to our events and like this crew of people is amazing without even necessarily realizing that it's what we represent, but just love the community and want to be a part of it, and then get introduced to microdosing because the community is so beautiful. And they're like, what are these people doing? I want to be a part of it. So that's happening on June 19th. Chelsea will be sending an invite out for that shortly. So if you stay in touch with everything we're doing, Instagram, newsletter, etc., you will be in the loop for that. Cool. And then the last thing I wanted to mention is this very exciting project that we have been working on is that we just launched a research study. So all of this to be said, even though the community speaks for itself, all of that great stuff, we still are in a world that operates on the science. And we also want to be a part of moving the science forward around microdosing. And so we're plugging into a few other research studies. But one of the ones that we just recently launched ourselves, spearheaded by Stephanie Carzon, who runs our research committee, is a study for microdosing on chronic headaches. And so this is live. You can apply for it now. It's a retroactive study. Here are the requirements. So flagging this if anyone here has actually experienced this. You have to be 18 years or older, experience chronic headaches around 15 per month for the last 3 months, and you've used psychedelics any sort of psychedelic, doesn't need to be microdosing, while experiencing headaches. And we want to do research on basically the impact of psychedelics on your experience that would then be used to go and fuel a larger study. So that is live. Chelsea will put the link to apply to that study. Chelsea, if you can pop that in the chat, that would be amazing. And all of the stuff that we're doing, I guess I'll end my last second here with all the stuff that we're doing is really taking this community, growing the media, growing the impact to actually inform legal policy so that more people can have access to this beautiful tool in a legal and safe way. I think I went over my time, but I'm going to pass it back to Paul.
Thank you, Alli. So microdosingcollective.org. Party is June 19th at MAPS. It'll be at a place called the Clubhouse. We also have that research study that Alli talked about. Make sure to go if you haven't signed up yet for Tracey Tee, Moms on Mushrooms, momsonmushrooms.com, The Grow. Tracey dropped a link in there. And then if you're looking for a great podcast to listen to, check out Third Wave Psychedelic Podcast. That'll be my plug. It'll be another few weeks. We'll have another one. We're continuing to do monthly webinars for the Microdosing Collective. So just keep an eye out for future webinars. We want to give, a big note of appreciation to Tracey for joining us today. So thank you, Tracey. And also big thanks to Alli for joining us and being part of us. And Monica, I would imagine Tracey meant monthly, it's $2, but yearly it might be $25, right? Tracey,
yeah, it's 25 for the year. Yeah.
Right.
That's just our community. We have plenty of other resources. And I think there's just a free PDF too. If you're just curious, and I guide you through 12 questions to ask yourself if microdosing is right for you. So you can start there. It's totally free. I can drop the link in again, or Chelsea can, but yeah. And thank you guys so much. Anything you do, I am fully supportive of. So always happy to be with you. And a fellow tall girl, always.
I love it. Last two things, just quick mention. Follow Tracey on Instagram. It's Moms on Mushrooms Official, right? Is your yes. handle?
Yeah.
Moms on Mushroom Official. Check us out on Instagram. And the best way to support and have this basically grow and grow viral is to share all Tracey's stuff and share our newsletter. We're going to be using that as like our community kind of fuel, our petition of sorts to inform legal policy. So share our newsletter with a bunch of people that you think would love it, or even edgy people that might not like it, but you want to introduce to this conversation.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you all.
Thank you, Chelsea. Thank you.
Everyone.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.